Hey guys, it's Yuta. So this is a re-edited version because one of the people didn't want to be in the video anymore. But why not watching it again? Enjoy.
Half Japanese, half Filipino, but I grew up the most of my life in the Philippines, and I've been in Japan for like 3 years.
I was born in the States, in USA, in New Jersey. But I lived in the Middle East for about 5 years in a small country called Bahrain. And then I moved to Canada when I was 10. And then I came to Japan when I was 23, and I'm 25 now. Mostly when people ask me where my parents are from, I would say Pakistan.
I'm Australian born, but with Chinese Cambodian background.
I'm from California. My father is from Hong Kong, but my mother was born in America, but they are both Chinese.
My parents are both Vietnamese born. They moved to California in the 70s, and I was born and raised in California.
It depends on who. Some people think that I look very Filipino, and some people are like, no, you're actually Filipino, so it's kind of confusing between me.
You do look Filipino.
They usually guess that I'm from India, so they're not technically wrong, so I don't really give them a hard time.
A lot of Japanese people do think I'm actually Japanese until I start speaking Japanese. So I get Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Korean.
It's usually Singapore or China.
Usually Hong Kong for some reason. Hong Kong or China.
The way they react is pretty much like, oh, you're so good in Japanese, and like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm half Japanese, but like I study Japanese, so they're not as surprised as let's say a white person knows how to speak Japanese. So usually in Japan, when you say you're half, they start asking you're half from where. Then in my case, I said Philippines. Then they react like, oh, soda. Then they start looking away. Like, no, because like if you're half Caucasian, actually they'll be like, oh, sugoi desu ne. So there's a difference.
Yeah, you feel that.
Yeah, I feel that because I have been with like half American friends as well. There's like this, lingering image of Filipinos in Japan. Because if you guys didn't know, during the bubble era, a lot of Filipinos went to Japan because it was so easy to get visas, and the image pretty much became shit.
Has anybody said something about like that kind of image of Filipinos?
Towards me?
Yeah.
Oh no, not me. Like, but you can tell like you're being treated that way because of that reason. Especially between the older people, like let's say 50s. Basically, your seniors in work. They're pretty much familiar with the bubble era, so.
Like in a tourist area, I get left alone. I'm at peace. But at the same time, when I do try to speak Japanese and I don't do a good job of it, I do see that people, like Japanese people, tend to look down on me. They think that, oh, you're Japanese, but you can't speak Japanese when I'm not really actually Japanese. And they treat me pretty well, but I think that might be because of my skin color. Especially because I'm more of a lighter skinned Asian. I do get that privilege of the benefits from that. So I do know of cases of like where I've met darker skinned Asians and from more like actually are born from like Southeast Asia and coming here, and they do get treated in a different way.
They pretty much treat me the same as other Western foreigners for the most part, but then they start getting more interested in my background. And they start asking me questions about India because they're curious about India. And then they get disappointed when I tell them that I don't really know much because I've never been to India. And they get really surprised. I'll tell you about one experience. When I went to Kamakura, I went to this restaurant, and the owner there, he was Japanese, and his English was pretty low, but then his customers spoke English really well. And they both agreed and told me that they find it easier to speak English with me. They know that I'm a native speaker, but they still find it easier to speak English with me than a foreigner that's like tall and has blonde hair or blue eyes or something. Yeah, and they usually don't get as intimidated when I approach someone to speak with, because I'm even shorter than a lot of Japanese people. So in the police box, is that police? Yeah. So they've stopped me actually about 4 times as I've been walking home, or I was actually in my suit and my tie. Their whole demeanor, like their whole behavior changes once they see that I'm from Canada and that I teach English. I've never had any Japanese person act with hostility towards me. They usually compliment my nose or my eyes, the size of my head, and my face, which I thought was quite strange at first, but it's a really good thing in Japan.
English-speaking Asian friends who are also in the JET program have said is that at our schools, our teachers have told us that because our appearance is Asian, our students, Japanese students, might feel more at ease or more comfortable with us subconsciously. I think I have noticed some Japanese people I've met, when they find out I'm from America, their interest is slightly increased because maybe they have interest in Western culture.
They're very hospitable, so they'll teach you in regards to what you don't know. So they're pretty much chill with it, you know.
From my culture, and this is also as a Cambodian culture, we're very direct people. There's instances where we will just say what we think, like, oh, that's ugly, that doesn't fit you. Like, we say that, and we, instead of like Japan, we kind of like laugh. And Cambodians will laugh at every situation, even like really awkward situations. So I've noticed that some people get really like offended by that. I think it's with the gestures, because obviously I'm using Western gestures. Like just me waving, for example, like something as simple as that, because obviously here in Japan, you know, the greeting gesture is a bow. And when I wave, you can just see people like, wait a minute, that's is he Japanese? So there's that. I noticed a little bit of that. Nothing that really would be detrimental to like me living here. It's just more of like a small like shock. I did have one moment, because I do have tattoos, and I noticed this was always in Kyoto. I was in the mall in Kyoto, and I remember I was walking down, it was summertime, I was with my friend, and I had my tattoos exposed, and I just remember like these like oji-sans and oba-sans kind of like swearing at me. They're just going like, oh, what's wrong with him? Is he stupid? I could hear them in the back, and like they were not hiding it, and it was a bit of a shock. I had another incident when I was in this is back in Osaka. It was in Kanazano-cho, and I was walking around there with my friend, and we were taking photos. There was this humongous mural. It was on the road, and we were taking photos. And then I think this guy, he may have been drunk, but he actually came up to us and was like, "That's rude. Don't do that. Don't do that." And he actually started to chase us down, speaking to me in Japanese. And then like I said I couldn't understand, and he's just like, "Are you not Japanese? Are you not Japanese? Are you not Japanese?" And then he found that out, and then like that I wasn't Japanese, and he just started to like swear at me a lot more. So that was quite a shock, especially because it is in Japan. You know, small things like taking your shoes off, you know, respecting your elders. That's already like a kind of like a unwritten rule within most Asian cultures. So because of that, I was able to get a lot of respect as well.
I think one I committed recently was just when I studied in university, we did learn about Japanese culture and about meishi business cards and how you should treat those with utmost respect. And still, I received one, and I thought I was doing fine, and I put it in my back pocket, and then I was told that's the equivalent of sitting on that person's face. So despite knowing a little bit, I still messed up. So just those small nuances like that, I feel there's just a million things to learn. I'd say one experience that's unique to Asian foreigners would be this blank look. For example, if we speak English or even Japanese to a Japanese person, and for either language, if they don't understand, they'll give us a blank look because in their minds they think, oh, this person's Japanese, why can't I understand them? And we have to go through a little shuffle before they finally realize, oh, this person's a foreigner.
I can remember one time I went to Uniqlo, and it was a very casual experience going in, trying on clothes, and I guess I was a little too antsy. I just kind of jumped in the changing room, kind of want to take off my clothes, got to get out quick, and then the guy kind of like almost pulled me outside a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, take off your shoes, I'm sorry. And then he just kind of saw me, he saw I was Asian, kind of thought I knew the customs already, but that was my first day in Japan, and I couldn't really grasp that concept yet. So it was kind of jarring to me. It's like, oh, it's a changing room. You don't have to take my shoes in there. So that was one of the experiences that I had, especially in my classroom. I go to an international school, so the Japanese senseis and even all the Korean, Chinese kids in class always have this perception of America in such a way that everyone has a gun, apparently. We all carry guns, And then it's very dangerous in LA or anywhere in the US, no matter where you go. So one question I always get asked is, do you have a gun? No matter where it is. It could be on the street corner talking to a store clerk or something like that, and I mention I'm from America, and they always bring up, oh, so do you have a gun? Does everyone have guns there? Their image, I asked them, like, is that really you really think? And they're like, yeah, and the coats, you have guns, right? No, not at all. I don't know where that perception came from. I guess it's from the movies and all the action movies they watch, but guns and hamburgers is another common one. They think we carry hamburgers with us everywhere we go. We had this one class trip where we all had to bring some food to go on, some bento to go along with, and their Koreans were saying, oh, we're going to bring bibimbap. The Chinese students are bringing chow mein or whatever. They all turn to me, they're saying, oh, you're going to barbecue burgers, right? And I don't know if they thought I was bringing a barbecue with me in my luggage, like toiletries, but somehow that's the perception they have.
What's your favorite lunch?
My favorite lunch? I have to say, I'm just going to say hamburgers for you, Yuta. I'm going to say hamburgers. One of the cultural differences I just thought of right now is something as simple as goodbye hugs and hello hugs. We always do that in America. It's not really a big deal. I do it with guys, do it with girls. I think from the first or second hangouts I've had, I kind of lean in to give my girlfriends a good hug, and it's probably the top 1 or 2 most awkward hugs I've ever had in my life. And I don't think they've ever hugged anyone in their life. I felt bad. I felt like I wanted to hug them more, but then they would have just like made it worse. So I feel like that's one of the taboos here. Like, you can't go around hugging people or even touching people in general that you're not on an intimate level with. Being on time, though, was one of the biggest things about Japanese and their punctuality, really. You have to be on time on the dot. If you're not, you really have to apologize for it. And then I feel like they're unforgiving at sometimes, too. Like, I was late for a couple meetups with my friends, and then I don't think I met up with them after that. I think it was a one-time deal. I was late for maybe like 5 or 10 minutes even. And I said sorry, I did the whole thing, but I feel like they take it very seriously sometimes, and it took me a little while to learn that, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. Especially the people who come constantly late, then the sensei will absolutely hold up the class, make you stand up front and ask you why you were late, why you keep coming late, and then they basically just make you feel embarrassed on purpose.
Working in Japan for me, so I took a different route with a lot of foreigners. So the first time I actually came to Japan, I was doing dishwashing at a sushi restaurant. Then while I was doing that, I was studying Japanese because I knew zero, by the way, guys. So I knew zero Japanese. Then I took a dishwashing job for like 6 months. Then I got the full-time job. Then while, studying for the N1 test, then I think it was 2 years later, I finally got the N1. Then I went to a translating job at a tax firm. So I started translating taxes, doing other people's taxes and whatnot. Then for me, I think it's pretty easy because I went that route. But then again, it was the toughest 2 years of my life. Because then you're doing dishwashing and studying Japanese at the same time, right? So it's like the hustle, you know what I mean? So, and a lot of English teachers don't really, do that. So, I mean, it's their decisions and I totally respect it. But for me, it's way easier. So I can search my jobs in Japanese, which is actually easier because you are in Japan, compared to people who search in English and think that they'll land a job. It's pretty hard. So advice to some people: study some basic Japanese, at least enough to get a job.
A lot of people that want to come to Japan, that they fantasize about things like Akihabara, Shibuya, Kyoto. But it's to put that away, and yes, it is part of Japanese culture, but it is so much more than that. I think if they do want to consider living here, it is very important to actually find a hobby and find something that can allow you to mix with Japanese people. But at the same time, don't come here and expect that it's all going to be a pleasant journey. And if you are of another Asian background especially, I think really find where your community here in Japan is, because finding a Cambodian community, it keeps me humble and keeps me safe as well. So just coming here prepared and being really, really realistic, I think that will give you the best experience here in Japan.
Learn the language, go out to temples, go out to love hotels, do everything. You can experience Japan however you want, so just go and have a good time. And Japan is every bit as awesome as you think it is.
You should definitely check out Waffle House.
So as Kenji said, speaking Japanese will make a huge difference if you want to live in Japan. Just imagine very few people speak English in Japan, but if you speak a little bit of Japanese, you will be able to talk to 127 million people, and that's huge. So if you want to learn Japanese with me, I can send you some free Japanese lessons by email, so click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta. Alright, see you guys soon. Ciao ciao.